It is most likely the case that you have learnt about economics or the laws of supply and demand wrong.
2, 3, 4.
They assume universal laws about human behavior and rationality, and they're based on very narrow and shallow views of human decision making. So for instance, if you look at a textbook supply and demand graph, you'll find that every time the supply increases, prices decrease. Likewise, when demand increases, prices increases as more people valuing the item or the good or the service that is being sold. But let me propose an alternative method of understanding economics, one that is grounded in actual human behavior and not just on these theoretical abstractions which have no real meaning in human data. The way that you should frame every economic view you have about the market and society in general is based on something I call the alphabet method. Now, the alphabet method goes as follows. You have an event happen in the world, and you propose some consequences, you hypothesize some consequence of that event. Whereas supply and demand might tell you that event will happen, instead you must test the empirical relationship between the event and the outcome. Because now we're not just basing it on an abstraction, we're finding a real concrete, studyable effect of some event that has happened. So that's part A. Event happens. Part A, you find the consequence of that event happening. And then from that consequence, you move to part B. You think of a second consequence, a knock-on effect. And you guessed it. Again, you find the empirical relationship. You study the data. You find some actual real human outcome based on numbers and figures. And you repeat this process over and over again as you think of more knock-on effects of an event happening. You hypothesize an outcome, and then you test to see if there's empirical data to back it up. And if there isn't, maybe that brings you back to somewhere else and puts you down another avenue of finding out the real outcome of an event. To make this more concrete, consider this simple example. You have a very small town, and in that town there is one lemon juice stand. Now, one day, some person decides, hey, I think they're doing pretty well with their business. I'm going to set up my own lemon stand to compete against them. Now, typical supply and demand models will tell you that there is no longer a monopoly in the society. There's now an oligopoly where we have two firms competing against each other. Now, the typical economic model will tell you that because supply has increased, competition has increased, therefore driving down the price of the lemon juices. It will also tell you that the individuals now have to compete a bit more on quality, right? Before they had a monopoly on the society, so they could kind of give what they wanted, and as long as people kind of liked it, they would go along with it and buy it. But now that they're competing, they have to compete on quality, so they have to make the product better. They have to find better lemons and find better cups to serve it in and make the experience better. Now, as the price lowers, typical economic models will predict that there'll be an increase in demand for the lemon juice. There'll be an increase for demand as the price lowers, and then simultaneously an increase in demand as the quality of the product offering gets better. But instead of that economic model, let's consider it through our alphabet method. So the event happening is the new lemon stand setting up. That's the event that sets off the causal chain of explanation of empirical evidence that we need to find. But this time, unlike the typical economic model, we find that the prices don't actually decrease now there's more competition. And after conducting some surveys and finding some empirical data for the area of the town, they realize the reason is because these two lemon stands are actually on opposite ends of town. And before the new introduction of the new lemon stand, the consumers who were consuming the old lemon stand were only those people in their half of town. But now you have a second group of people who are consuming the new lemon stand, and those people all come from the other side of town. So in this situation, there's been no real increase in the amount of supply for the original consumers because they're still only going to go to the stand nearby their houses. They're not going to venture to the other side of the city. It doesn't really matter. It's too far away from them, and the product difference is not really that much. It's not worth the trip. So the supply increasing, price going down relationship is not actually found in this situation. It's not come to fruition. So what about the quality of the product increasing? Well, empirical data in this situation actually tells us a different story. The story it tells us is that yes, there's more competition, so they're going to have to make their product better, but we actually find out that the product offering, the quality of the product's gone down. And the reason being is because now that there's two lemon stand producers in this town, they realize they can work together to source a supplier who's someone else from the original supplier who is cheaper to get from, but actually their product offering is worse. That means the lemons they're now importing to make the lemon juice is of lower standard, and it's a bit older, so it tastes not as great. So prices have flattened, they haven't gone down, quality has actually gone down, now the product offering is worse, so demand is actually going down. We've found that rather than just relying on these kind of logical assumptions of the typical supply and demand models, we've tested empirical data and relationships in the real environment to draw our conclusions and form our opinions. And this is because abstract supply and demand models don't actually tell us the answer. They just hypothesize about human behavior and incentives, but we must think more laterally, think more diversely about what could be going on, what are the effects, is there actual empirical data we could draw from the environment to draw our conclusions. And these models can break down for a plethora of reasons. There's no single reason why it might happen, but to demonstrate how irrationality can play a part in determining how people view their environment around them, how they make choices, there's a few kind of common ideas which you should understand moving forward. Now, if you're interested in these ideas of human irrationality, a lot of this is covered in the book Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, which I put up here. So here are the 5 different human irrationalities that may be affecting our lemon stand situation and determining how supply and demand works and why it breaks down from the traditional model. Number 1 is present bias. People, on average, have a bias towards the present. They prefer consumption now rather than consumption in the future. That is why, on average, most people don't save very much money, because they're focused on consuming now and having the pleasure now rather than thinking about the long-term goal and not averaging across time their utility. They're just thinking about the utility in the moment now. So people may decide that, hey, I don't actually want to buy lemon juice from the other side of town this afternoon after work. Instead, I just want to buy it this morning, get it now, consume it now, and then I've had enough lemon juice for the day. So people are biased towards doing it in the morning close to their home because they get the consumption now, they get that happiness, that joy, that rush, that sugar rush right now. Number 2, lack of information. Maybe the reason that the person doesn't go to the new lemon stand is quite simply because they don't know about it. They literally just have not heard of it on their side of town. No one's told them about it. They haven't, heard it at the coffee shop or anything. So their decision to consume the original lemon juice is not based on any, law of supply and demand. It's simply just lack of information. And the third irrationality is asymmetry of information. Maybe the lemon stand owner for the incumbent lemon stand, is putting on his stand a sign that says, "We have the highest quality ingredients in town." It might be a lie, but the person who's consuming that lemon is not knowledgeable about where the stuff is coming from. Maybe they believe it. There's an asymmetry in information between the seller and the buyer. And this asymmetry causes someone to consume differently, which breaks down our model again. Number 4 is loyalty. Perhaps the person selling the lemon juice who was there originally is a friend of a friend. It's quite a small town, right? They all know each other. Maybe you actually quite like this person, you want to support them. You're like, okay, someone new is setting up, but realistically, I'm just going to continue going where I'm going. I like the guy, I want to help him. I'm happy to spend my money there with him. And number 5 is trust in the incumbent. Very often it's the case that people are very brand loyal. So even though a better product offering might come along, or a better price, or a better combination with other products, they are loyal and stuck with the original producer, the original seller, because they just have so much trust in that. The perfect modern example is the Apple ecosystem, right? People are scared to try to change to Samsung, although they might have in some cases, better options, cheaper options, same quality specs, everything like that. They decide to stay with Apple because they're so used to that brand and they have so much trust in the products that they just continue consuming. Now, these are 5 irrationalities listed today. Might seem very small in this example, very not that meaningful, but if you expand this idea into a full market system with hundreds of producers, hundreds of suppliers, all of these complex market interactions, these massive, like millions of pieces fitting together can really impact how people decide to consume and all the irrationalities that people are having when they decide to consume. We can't just assume that there's going to be this outcome from this hypothesized supply and demand. You can't just say demand goes down, prices go down, because that's not necessarily going to happen. Instead, we must use the alphabet method. We must consider an event and look at all of the possible knock-on effects of that event. And in considering those hypothesized knock-on effects, we want to find empirical relationships between the data and our hypothesized event before we draw any conclusions.